You're just a nanny with a dream. My sister screamed it while bouncing her baby on her hip, her voice slicing through the backyard like a lawnmower blade catching a stone. The laughter came fast, my uncle choking on a swig of beer, my cousin slapping his thigh like he'd heard the joke of the century, and my mother pressing her wine glass to her lips to hide the smug smile forming underneath. And me? I stood still beside the grill, hands folded politely in front of me, pretending I hadn't just been reduced to a punchline. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Emily, don't take it personally, my mother said with faux sympathy, her southern twang dipping sweet like poisoned honey. A woman your age, watching someone else's kid while dreaming of what? Writing a children's book. Her laugh was quiet but sharp. That's adorable. My knuckles tightened around the napkins I held, the edges of the paper digging into my palms. I'd come to this family barbecue in good faith. I wore a floral sundress, kept my hair neat, brought peach cobbler from scratch, and yet it only took one sentence from Jessica to undo everything. Dream big, sis, Jessica smirked, tipping her glass. But maybe dream realistic next time. I heard that word again, nanny, like it was synonymous with invisible, or helpless, or less than. Never mind that I'd helped raise her child while she went on yoga retreats and spa weekends. Never mind that I worked 12-hour days for a man who trusted me more than his own family. Never mind that I'd once sold my car to keep my sister's lights on, and she never even knew. I said nothing, not because I was weak, but because I knew what was about to walk through the garden gate. The second the latch clicked behind me, I felt it. Every head turned as his polished shoes touched the patio. He didn't say a word at first. He just walked straight past the confused stares and shocked faces and stopped at my side. Nathan Hale, the man I had worked for, the man I'd kept secret, the man who now, in full view of my family, took my hand and laced his fingers with mine like we'd done it 1,000 times before. My sister's face fell. What is he doing here? She stammered, shifting her baby to the other hip. Nathan didn't even glance at her.
He looked only at me.
I couldn't let you face them alone, he said softly. And then he turned toward the rest of the backyard.
Calm.
Collected. Unshakable. She's not just your nanny, he announced. She's my wife. Silence. Even the birds seemed to hush. She's what? My mother breathed. Nathan pulled something from his coat, crisp, folded, and deliberate. He handed it to Jessica. Also, he added, this is the deed to your house. As of today, it's no longer in your name. Jessica stared down at the paper like it had turned to flame in her hands. Nathan smiled slightly. It's in hers now. The baby started crying. But no one moved. No one laughed. Not anymore. You're lying, Jessica finally whispered, her voice shaky but trying to sound confident. This is some joke, right? She looked around for backup, but even the relatives who'd laughed the hardest earlier were suddenly silent. A few stepped back. Others looked down at their drinks. No one moved to defend her. I stayed still. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I let the silence stretch, heavy and necessary, because this family only understood power when it showed up with paperwork and a diamond ring. Nathan gently squeezed my hand. Do you want me to explain, or would you rather? My eyes met Jessica's. I saw panic blooming fast, panic I'd worn on my own face for years growing up under their weight. But I didn't blink. I think I'll take it from here, I said. I stepped forward. Past the table covered in deviled eggs and sweet corn. Past my uncle who once told me no man would marry a woman who changed diapers for a living. Past my mother, who still looked like she hadn't fully inhaled since the word wife left Nathan's mouth. You all wanted a story, I began. Let me give you one. I turned to my sister. Remember last year? When you and Brian defaulted on the mortgage? When you told everyone you'd figured it out? That was me. I made the call. I wrote the check. Nathan and I had just gotten married in private. You know why I didn't say anything? Because I wanted to see who you all really were when you didn't think I had anything to offer. Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came. You mocked my job, but I raised your son when you couldn't be bothered. You laughed at my dreams, but I wrote every night after putting your baby to sleep. You said I was nothing. My voice cracked, but only for a second. You all did. I turned toward my mother. You said I was too soft, too emotional, a burden with fantasies. Remember that. Her lips parted, but I kept going. Nathan saw what none of you ever did. He believed in me. Not because I was his employee, because I was a fighter. And when we fell in love, we decided to do it quietly. Build something real. Away from this circus. Nathan stepped forward again. And now we're building a life together. This house. He nodded at the paper in Jessica's shaking hand. Emily didn't take it out of cruelty. She bought it legally because your loan was falling apart and you were lying about it. She saved you without your knowledge. And when you bragged today like she was beneath you, we decided it was time you knew the truth. Jessica's knees gave a little. She had to lean on the patio table. Her baby started crying again, and this time, even the sound didn't pull any sympathy from anyone watching. My aunt spoke up from the back. Emily, is this true? You saved her house. I nodded. She was days away from foreclosure. And then out of nowhere, my father spoke. Well, if you're married now to him, he paused, glaring at Nathan like he was the devil in a suit. Don't come crawling to us for anything when it ends. I turned slowly to him. Crawl? I repeated. I haven't asked you for a single thing in 10 years. You all closed that door long ago. The only difference now is I've stopped waiting for you to open it again. It was like a fire was ripping through every inch of the backyard. But no one moved. They just watched. Watched the girl they thought would always stay quiet rise and take back the story. I took a deep breath. The wind blew through my hair. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a shadow in this family. I felt like the storm they never saw coming. Jessica hadn't sat down since the moment Nathan walked in. Her hands trembled as she tried to hush the baby now fussing in her arms. Her husband, Brian, stood off to the side like a man who just realized the ship was sinking, and fast. And my mother? She kept adjusting her bracelet, pretending this wasn't the most humiliating afternoon of her life. I should have felt satisfied. I should have soaked in their shame like sunlight. But instead, I just felt tired. Nathan noticed. He leaned closer to me and whispered, "You want to leave? I'll have the car brought around." I shook my head slowly. Not yet. Because this wasn't about a dramatic exit. This was about the reckoning. I stepped toward the center of the patio where all eyes could see me. I know what you all think. That I'm the soft one. That I ran away to play nanny, while the rest of you built real lives. But let me remind you of something. Your real lives? They're built on borrowed time, bad credit, and fake smiles. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. I kept going. Jessica acts like royalty, but she couldn't pay her utility bills without someone bailing her out. Brian? He's still lying about working from home. I've seen the past due notices in their trash. Don't act like you're better than us, Jessica snapped, her voice rising again. You married rich. That's it. That's all you are now, someone's trophy wife. Nathan stepped forward again, but I held up a hand.
No.
Let me handle this. I locked eyes with her. I wasn't looking to marry anyone. I fell in love with someone who respected my work, my mind, my heart. Someone who read my first manuscript and told me it was publishable, not laughable. Do you even remember the last time you believed in something? Jessica's jaw clenched. You've always needed people to fail, so you can feel tall. But that ends today. Then I turned to the others. If anyone here ever wondered why I disappeared for holidays, or didn't call back, or never brought anyone to dinner, it wasn't because I was ashamed of my life. I paused, letting the air hang heavy. I was ashamed of this one. Complete silence. Even the kids stopped playing. And then, finally, my father stood up.
Slow.
Deliberate. He looked at me for a long time. And for once, there was no mockery in his eyes. Just discomfort. Like someone who'd been handed a mirror after decades of living in darkness. You always had a flair for the dramatic, he said at last. But I'll give you this, you were always stronger than I thought. A half admission.
But still not enough.
You thought I was weak because I cried, I said softly. Because I forgave. Because I kept hoping you'd show up for me the way I kept showing up for all of you. I looked around the yard. You all wanted a puppet. Someone to play the part you assigned her. But I rewrote the script. And now, I don't need your applause. I just needed you to see me, one time,
Clearly.
before I go. Jessica stepped forward, her face red. You're not going anywhere with my house. It's not yours anymore, I cut in. And I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to be free. I took Nathan's hand. And I've never felt lighter in my life. The car was waiting at the curb. Sleek, black, windows tinted, like the future I'd never been invited into, but built myself brick by brick behind their backs. Nathan nodded to the driver, but didn't open the door. Not yet. He stood by me, quietly protective, but with the same look he'd given me the first time he ever read my notebook cover to cover. Admiration, respect, love that didn't need to speak loud to be heard. Jessica wasn't finished, though. She stormed across the patio, shoved the baby into Brian's arms, and came right up to me. Her eyes were burning, but behind the anger, I could see it. Fear. The kind of fear that only surfaces when someone realizes the pedestal they stood on wasn't real. It was borrowed. This is revenge, isn't it? She hissed. You've been waiting to humiliate me. I tilted my head slightly, watching her face.
No, Jessica.
If this were revenge, you'd be living out of a motel, and I'd be watching from a window. I stepped closer. This is just truth. And truth stings more than payback ever could. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. No witty comeback. No loud defense. For the first time in my life, my sister didn't know what to say. And then my mother stepped in. Always perfectly dressed, always hosting, always playing queen bee even in her silence. But her eyes, God, her eyes were wide now. Not with shock. With something closer to recognition. You married him, she said, almost in disbelief, as if it wasn't the deed, or the new last name, or the ring that stunned her, but the possibility that someone she dismissed had outgrown her grasp. I nodded. And he respects me, I said. Not just as his wife, but as someone who never stopped fighting for her own worth, even when her own mother told her she had none. She winced.
Good.
You always said dreams don't pay bills, I continued. But mine did. I sold my book last week. It's going into production. And guess what? The dedication page doesn't mention a single one of you. That one cut. I could see it. And still, none of them said sorry. Not one of them. Because apologies require reflection. And they weren't built for that. They were built for image. Appearances. Denial. Nathan opened the car door for me. I stepped inside. But just before I sat down, I turned back. To anyone who ever made me feel invisible, I said clearly, this is your final look. I hope it lasts. Jessica turned away, arms crossed. My mother blinked too fast. Brian looked like he wanted to disappear. My father stood there stiff as concrete. But no one said a word. No protest. No fake hugs. Just silence. And I realized then that silence was louder than any applause. We pulled away from the curb in silence, Nathan's hand resting over mine as the car glided down the road. The backyard was behind us now. So were the sneers, the whispers, the years of being the family's afterthought. It was over. Not just the party, the chapter. And something about that made the air feel different, lighter. Like I could finally breathe without holding back the exhale. I turned to Nathan. Was I too harsh? He looked at me the way he always did, like every part of me, even the uncertain ones, deserved to be seen. You were honest. They just weren't ready for it. I smiled faintly. I think I've waited my whole life for today. He leaned closer. They weren't laughing when I called you my wife. I laughed. A real one this time. The kind I never got to have at family dinners. That night, I sat by our balcony window, watching the city lights twinkle. My laptop was open, manuscript file still glowing on the screen. I wasn't writing. I didn't need to. Not tonight. Because tonight wasn't about creating. It was about becoming. I'd spent years surviving, smiling through insults, babysitting through judgment, writing in stolen hours between everyone else's chaos. And I'd done it quietly, praying someone would notice. But no one ever did. Until Nathan. He'd noticed when I stayed late just to clean spilled juice off the kitchen tile without being asked. When I jotted story ideas on post-it notes between nap schedules. When I read bedtime stories in voices animated enough to make even his tired, hardened heart soften. He didn't just see me. He chose me. And I'd chosen myself, finally, by no longer shrinking to fit the role my family shoved me into. A few days later, a package arrived at our penthouse. No return label. Just a slim envelope tucked inside with handwriting I recognized immediately. Jessica. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a photo of us as kids, me and her, barefoot in the backyard, covered in mud, laughing so hard our eyes were closed. Taped to the back was a note. I didn't know I was becoming the person who would hurt you. I'm not asking for anything. Just thank you. For saving my house. For still showing up, even when we didn't deserve it.
Jessica. I stared at it for a long time.
Not forgiveness. Not redemption. But something real. And sometimes that was more than enough. The following week, I sat in front of a packed bookstore. My first reading. My first published novel. The crowd was quiet as I closed the last page and looked up. I used to think I needed permission to matter, I told them. But you don't need a title, or a ring, or approval to be enough. You just need to remember that quiet doesn't mean powerless. A woman in the front row teared up. And as the room filled with applause, I realized they might have called me just a nanny with a dream.
But now,
I was a wife, an author, and finally my own damn story.
The laughter hit me before the words even sank in. The smell of grilled ribs and smoky charcoal filled the backyard, but it couldn't mask the sting of humiliation. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city. You're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us. What would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Gerald Carter, my father, raised, his beer bottle like a toast, his voice sharp and booming so everyone heard. Everyone here is a success except you, he said, eyes locked on me. My daughter, the disappointment of this family. Chairs creaked as relatives leaned forward, eager for the show. My cousin Amanda snorted into her cup, covering her, mouth like it would hide the smirk. Uncle Franklin shook his head with mock pity. And my sister Madison? She laughed the loudest, her diamond bracelet glinting under the patio lights as she clapped her hands like she'd just heard the best joke of the night. Even my brother Lucas, who usually stayed quiet, muttered, "He's not wrong." The table roared. Every chuckle scraped against my skin, every smile carved deeper into my chest. I gripped my paper plate so hard it bent in my hand. Ethan, my husband, sat stiff beside me, his jaw clenched, one hand brushing against mine under the table. His silent message was clear. Don't let them see you break. Dad wasn't finished. Look around, Haley. He gestured toward the long tables lined with relatives. Amanda just got promoted to regional manager. Lucas built his own business. Madison's married into money. And you? What do you have to show us? My pulse pounded in my ears. I stood, my chair scraping harshly against the concrete. The laughter paused for just a moment, long enough for silence to fall heavy across the yard. I steadied my voice, though my throat burned. Thank you, Dad, I said. Thank you for reminding me exactly where I stand. Gerald leaned back, satisfied. That's all you've got? No fight? No defense? Figures. My untouched food slid off the plate and hit the grass as I set it down. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of a decision forming inside me. Ethan rose beside me, his presence steady, unshaken. "We're leaving," he said firmly, his eyes darting across the family with disgust. Whispers broke out instantly. "There she goes again, running away. She can't handle the truth." Pathetic. I didn't turn back. Not once. But something in me had changed. As we walked through the gate, Ethan leaned close, his voice low, steady, promising. "Tomorrow, Haley, they'll see who the real disappointment is." I didn't sleep that night. Not because of shame, because of anticipation. The weight in my chest was no longer humiliation. It was fire. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, the gate they mocked me through would be the gate I'd return to. But not the way they expected. Morning light streamed through the blinds, sharp and unrelenting. I hadn't closed my eyes once. Every laugh, every smirk from the night, before replayed in my head like a cruel movie. But now, instead of shame, I felt only clarity. Ethan walked into the kitchen, already dressed in his pressed shirt and jacket. He set his car keys on the counter and leaned against it, watching me as I sipped my coffee. "You're quiet," he said, voice low but certain. "But I know that look. What's the plan, Haley?" I set the cup down, my hand steady. "We're not staying here, Ethan. Not another night in this house, not another moment under their roof. I'm done being their target." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Finally. We had been saving in silence for years, working longer, hours, making sacrifices, planning. Every insult, every dismissive glance from my family only fueled me to move forward. What they didn't know was that Ethan and I had already signed papers for a townhouse across town. The keys were tucked safely in my purse. By 9, boxes were being carried out to the truck. The sound of packing tape ripping across cardboard echoed like a war drum. Each seal felt final, irreversible. "You sure you don't want to tell them?" Ethan asked as he lifted another box. I shook my head. "They'll see soon enough." The drive to the new place was quiet, but not heavy. It was the kind of silence filled with momentum, the rush before a storm breaks. Our townhouse was simple, but ours. White siding, a front porch, a driveway that caught the morning sun. I unlocked the door, and as it swung open, the air smelled like fresh paint and freedom. I stepped inside barefoot, the hardwood cool under my feet. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. No eyes judging me, no voices tearing me apart. Just Ethan and me, finally in control. But Ethan wasn't satisfied with just moving. He wanted more. "Haley," he said, standing in the empty living room, his voice echoing. "We could have told them last night, could have rubbed it in their faces, but you didn't. You wanted them to think they won." I looked at him, confused. And now we make sure when they see us again, they don't just regret what they said, they choke on it. I stared at him, the words sinking in. He was right. Walking away wasn't enough. My father, my sister, my brother, they thrived on putting me beneath them. They needed to be stunned into silence, forced to see me for who I really was, not who they decided I should be. We unpacked nothing. Instead, Ethan grabbed his jacket and tossed me mine. "Come on," he said. "We've got one more stop to make." By noon, we pulled back into the long gravel driveway of my parents' house. The same folding tables from the barbecue were still out, stacked with dirty plates and empty bottles. Laughter still carried from the backyard, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I stepped out of the car, the sound of the door slamming turning heads instantly. Madison was the first to notice, her face twisting into a sneer. "Well, look who decided to crawl back," Dad's voice followed, mocking, confident. "Haley, didn't expect you'd be brave enough to show your face this soon. What's wrong? Can't stay away from success." The others chuckled, ready for another round of jokes. But then Ethan walked around the car and dangled the new house, keys between his fingers. The metal glinted in the sunlight, sharp and undeniable. My voice cut through the laughter. I came back to say goodbye. Not just to this house, but to the way you've treated me my whole life. The backyard fell, silent. My father's smirk faltered, just slightly, but enough for me to see the crack. Ethan slipped his arm around my waist, his tone calm but lethal. We're done living under this roof. We're done letting you treat Haley like she's nothing. We moved into our own place this morning, and from now on, you don't get a say in her life. The words struck like lightning. Amanda's cup slipped from her hand, spilling onto the grass. Lucas blinked, his mouth opening but no sound coming out. Even Madison's smug grin froze in place, her hand tightening on the back of her chair. And my father, Gerald Carter, looked at me like he'd just seen a ghost he couldn't fight. You're lying, he said finally, his voice low, almost desperate. I pulled the keys from Ethan's hand and tossed them onto the table. They landed with a sharp clang. Drive by 14th Street if you think I'm lying. The house with the white porch? That's mine. That's ours. And you'll never take that away from me. Ethan took my hand, pulling me gently toward the car. My heart thundered, but my voice was steady, firm, unshakable. Last night you called me a disappointment. Today, you're watching me walk away free. Remember that. The silence that followed was deafening. No laughter, no mocking, just the sound of their pride collapsing in on itself. We got back into the car, and as Ethan drove us down the gravel driveway, I looked back one last time. They stood at the gate. My father, my siblings, my cousins, all of them speechless. For once, I wasn't the one walking away in shame. This time, they were. The silence from the gate replayed in my mind all night. For the first time in years, I wasn't the butt of their jokes. I was the storm they never saw coming. The next morning, Ethan and I sat on our new porch, coffee in hand, watching the quiet street hum awake. The air smelled of dew and promise. He glanced at me, smirking. You know they won't let this go, right? I sipped slowly, my chest rising with calm determination. Good. Let them choke on it. For once, it's their turn to explain me, not mine. It didn't take long. By noon, Madison's number flashed across my phone. Ethan raised a brow. Answer it, he said. Let's hear the damage. I pressed speaker. Madison's voice burst through, sharp and frantic. Haley, what was yesterday? Some kind of joke? You really think moving into a small townhouse makes you a success? Everyone's still laughing at you. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. If they're still laughing, Madison, why did you call me first thing in the morning? Her silence said more than her words ever could. I ended the call. By afternoon, another surprise came. My father's truck pulled up outside our new place, gravel crunching beneath his tires. Ethan tensed, but I stood. Let me handle him. Gerald. Carter climbed out, his face set in a scowl. He looked around at the porch, the painted shutters, the flowers I had planted in neat rows. He hated it, not because it was small, but because it was mine. You think you've proven something? He barked. You think buying a house makes you better than the rest of us? You'll regret this. Don't come running back when you fail. I walked down the steps, stopping just a foot from him. My voice was steady, sharper than I thought possible. No, Dad. I'm not proving anything to you. I'm proving it to myself. And that's the difference. You live for other people's applause. I don't need it anymore. His jaw twitched. He wanted to speak, but no words came. For the first time, Gerald Carter had no weapon to throw at me. Ethan stepped forward, his presence firm. You should go, he said coldly. This isn't your house. Not anymore. Dad's eyes flicked between us, and for a second I saw it. The panic of a man losing control, He turned back toward his truck, muttering under his breath, but I caught it anyway. "She'll never last." The engine roared, and just like that, he was gone. I stood frozen on the driveway, the cool air brushing my skin. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. "You stood your ground," he said softly. "That's bigger than any house." I nodded, but deep inside, I knew this was just the start. My family would keep trying to pull me back down, to remind me of the role they'd written for me. But the role was gone that night. As I unpacked boxes in our bedroom, Ethan pulled me close, his voice low and certain. "They'll test you again. They'll throw every insult, every trick they've got. But you're not the same Haley anymore." I looked at him, tears stinging but not falling. "No," I whispered. "I'm not." And they're about to learn that the hard way. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for their cruelty. I was ready for it, because now I had something they could never take from me, my own life. Asterisk. The following weekend, another family gathering took place, this time at Madison's polished home with her pristine lawn and oversized driveway. Invitations had gone out to everyone, except me. I wasn't surprised. But Ethan looked up from his phone, a smile playing at his lips. "Guess who just sent out pictures of their perfect family brunch?" he said, turning the screen to me. There they were, Madison, Lucas, Amanda, my father, posing like a magazine cover, all smiles, all pride. The caption read, "Carter. Family, where success runs deep." The sting was sharp, but instead of breaking me, it lit fire in my veins. "Let's go," I said. Ethan tilted his head. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "They think cutting me out keeps me small. Let's show them the truth." By noon, our car rolled up their driveway. Heads turned immediately. Conversations stopped. My sister nearly dropped her glass of champagne. "What are you doing here?" Madison demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut. I stepped out calmly, Ethan by my side, our car gleaming behind us. I didn't need an invitation to claim my place in the family. Dad stormed over, his voice low but venomous. "You don't belong here, Haley. Leave before you embarrass yourself again." But I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out a small folder from my bag and laid it on the patio table. Curious faces leaned closer. "These," I said evenly, "are the papers for my new home. Paid, signed, ours. Ethan and I built a life without any of you. And guess what? We didn't need your help, your approval, or your permission." The air went silent. Amanda's fake smile faltered. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Madison's hand trembled against her wine glass. Ethan added quietly, his tone razor sharp. "You should see it. Bigger than this house, built on our own hard work, not Daddy's handouts." Madison's jaw dropped. My father's face reddened. He opened his mouth, ready to spit fire, but I cut him off. "Last week you all laughed at me. You called me a failure, a disappointment. But today, you can't even look me in the eye without choking on your pride. That's the difference between you and me. I don't need to tear anyone down to feel tall." The silence pressed heavier than words. Their pride was cracking, splintering in real time. I turned to leave, but paused at the gate. "Enjoy your brunch," I said softly. "You'll need it, because the next time people ask about me, you'll have to admit the truth. I didn't fail. I walked away from you, and I'm better for it." Ethan and I walked back to the car, every eye glued to us. For the first time, I wasn't invisible, I wasn't weak, I was the one in control. As the engine roared to life, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My family stood frozen on the patio, stunned into silence, exactly where I had once been, but not anymore. This time, I was the one driving away, and they were the ones left standing in shame.
Stop pretending you can afford this. Dad said sharply, his voice slicing through the polished air of the luxury apartment lobby. Every head in the marble hall turned toward us. Realtor, tenants, even the concierge behind the desk. My father's words carried the same humiliation they always had, dressed neatly in arrogance and disappointment. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Dad. I began, but my sister Megan cut me off with a laugh that was just loud enough to sting. Oh please, Avery, she scoffed, tugging her designer bag higher on her shoulder. You can't even pay your own phone bill. Why are we wasting this poor man's time? The realtor, a man in his late 20s, polite smile fading, looked between us, unsure whether to step in or stay silent. His hands fidgeted with the clipboard like he wanted to vanish. I stood there, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Every insult, every time they told me I'd never amount to anything, every sneer when I said I was building something, it all came crashing back in seconds. But not this time. Actually, I said calmly, I can afford it. Dad gave a dry chuckle. Oh really? With what? Your tips? Don't embarrass yourself, Avery. Some people know their place in life, and you should too. The words hit like glass, sharp, cold, but I didn't flinch. I looked him dead in the eye and smiled. Funny thing, Dad. I stopped believing in places a long time ago. Megan rolled her eyes. Oh, here we go. The motivational speech. Are we done? I have dinner plans, with people who can actually pay their rent. The realtor cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am, he said carefully, turning toward me. Would you like me to show them your penthouse first or your second property down the street? For a moment, no one moved. My father's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Megan froze, her smirk sliding right off her face. The echo of the words, your penthouse, your second property, hung heavy in the air. I turned toward the realtor, my voice steady. The penthouse, I said softly. It's more private. As the words left my mouth, the look on my family's faces was something I'd waited years for, not out of spite, but survival. For once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the disappointment. I felt seen. Dad's jaw tightened. You're joking, he muttered. You're lying to make us look bad again. I met his glare.
No, Dad.
You did that all on your own. The elevator chimed. The polished gold doors opened, and I stepped inside first. My reflection stared back at me in the mirrored walls, a woman who had finally stopped apologizing for existing. Coming? I asked, keeping my voice light. Megan hesitated. Dad looked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the right insult to hide behind. They followed in silence. As the door slid shut, the faint reflection of their shocked faces disappeared behind me. For the first time in my life, I was the one walking ahead, not away from them, but beyond them. The elevator opened with a soft chime, and sunlight poured in like a spotlight. The penthouse stretched before us, wide, open, and breathtaking. Walls of glass revealed the skyline in golden afternoon light, the city sprawling endlessly below like a painting. Megan froze first, her phone slipping slightly in her manicured hand. Wait, this is yours, she stammered. I smiled faintly.
Yes.
I bought it last year. Dad walked in slowly, his polished shoes clicking against marble floors imported from Italy. His expression twisted between disbelief and anger, the kind a man wears when the world stops obeying his rules. He turned sharply to me.
How?
You didn't even finish college. You quit your job. You. I started my own company. I interrupted, my voice steady. It wasn't easy, but I did it without loans, without handouts, and without your help. He scoffed, shaking his head. Impossible. You were always the irresponsible one. Always chasing dreams that don't pay. Not everything I built was for your approval, I said quietly. The realtor, still standing by the door, cleared his throat politely. If you'll notice, sir, this penthouse includes a private elevator, rooftop garden, and skyline view. Ms. Porter also owns the adjoining suite, currently under renovation for her design studio. Megan blinked. You have a studio too? I nodded.
2, actually.
One here, one in LA. Her mouth parted slightly, disbelief flooding her expression. You moved to LA? I looked around the room, running my hand along the smooth counter. I didn't move. I expanded. Dad let out a low laugh, bitter, forced. All this, just to prove something to us. No, I said. To prove something to myself. He said nothing, but his eyes flickered with a pride he didn't want to admit. Megan tried to cover her shock with sarcasm. So, what, you're rich now? You think money changes who you are? I turned toward her, meeting her glare with calm precision. Money doesn't change who I am. It just changes how you see me. The silence that followed was heavy. The kind that forces people to see themselves clearly for the first time. The realtor smiled nervously, sensing the tension. Would you like to see the balcony, ma'am? It's one of the most exclusive views in the city. I nodded. Yes, please. He opened the sliding doors and the wind swept in, clean, crisp, carrying the scent of freedom I'd spent years chasing. The view stretched forever. Glittering lights, silver towers, the heartbeat of the city that had once ignored me. Megan stepped out beside me, whispering under her breath. I honestly thought you'd end up living with Dad forever. I looked at her. No anger this time. Just truth. So did he. Dad's reflection appeared behind us in the glass. His voice, low and uncertain, finally broke the silence. Avery, I didn't know you were doing all this. I know, I said softly. You never ask. For a moment, he looked smaller, like the man who once told me bedtime stories before ambition hardened his heart. I took one last look at the skyline before turning back inside. I think we're done here, I said to the realtor. He nodded. Of course, Miss Porter. I'll send over the renewal forms to your assistant this evening. Megan blinked again. Assistant. I smiled faintly. Yes, her name's Claire. She runs the schedule I used to dream of having. Dad said nothing more as we left. His silence followed me into the elevator, thick with realization. And as the doors closed again, I caught my reflection one last time, stronger, calmer, and completely free from needing their approval. This time, I wasn't the daughter who failed. I was the woman who built everything they said she couldn't. The city outside shimmered with lights, but inside my penthouse, everything felt strangely still. The echo of their disbelief lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. I stood barefoot on the balcony, the cool wind brushing against my hair, a glass of water in my hand instead of the champagne people expected from successful women. Success never tasted like victory to me. It tasted like exhaustion and silence. Behind me, I heard soft footsteps. My father had stayed. Megan had already left, muttering something about needing fresh air, though everyone knew she just couldn't bear sitting in a room where she wasn't the center anymore. Dad's reflection appeared faintly in the glass door. Older now, shoulders slouched, his voice no longer booming. You really did all this yourself? He asked quietly. I turned slowly.
Yes.
Every contract, every risk, every late night when I couldn't afford dinner but refused to quit. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. I thought you'd fall apart without help. I didn't think that I'd survive, I said, my voice sharp but calm. That I'd make it without your approval? His lips parted, but the words didn't come. For the first time in years, he didn't sound like a man in control. He sounded human. I set my glass down on the counter. Do you remember the day you told me I'd never make it on my own? He frowned, thinking. Avery. I do. I cut in. You said I'd come crawling back. That the world doesn't reward dreamers. You told everyone at dinner that Megan was the real success of the family. He lowered his gaze. That was years ago. Yes, I said, stepping closer. But words don't have an expiration date, Dad. They stay with people, especially when they come from someone they once looked up to. The silence between us was painful. Not angry anymore, just filled with things that should have been said years ago. He finally looked up at me. I was hard on you because I didn't want to see you fail. No, I said softly. You were hard on me because you couldn't imagine me succeeding. That hit him. His jaw tensed, eyes glassy under the dim light. He took a slow breath. You're right, he admitted.
I didn't see it then.
I was wrong. The words felt foreign coming from him. For a moment, I almost didn't believe I'd heard them right. I'm proud of you, he added quietly. I just didn't know how to say it without feeling small. I stared at him for a moment, then walked toward the balcony doors again. The city lights reflected in my eyes like distant memories. It's okay, I said.
You don't need to say it.
I didn't do this to make you proud. I did it to stop being broken. He nodded slowly, his voice hoarse. You sound like your mother. That made me pause. She'd passed years ago, long before I ever found my footing. I wish she could have seen this, I whispered.
She would have loved it, he said.
And she would have told me to stop being an idiot. That made me laugh, quietly, through the lump in my throat. He smiled faintly, like a man realizing too late that pride had cost him love. As he turned to leave, he stopped at the elevator and looked back. You built something amazing, Avery. Don't let anyone, especially me, make you feel small again. When the doors closed, I was alone once more, standing in the soft hum of the city. I walked to the balcony railing, breathing in the cold night air. Somewhere far below, car horns blended into the hum of life, reminding me how far I'd come from the girl who once counted pennies at a diner. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt healed. The revenge wasn't about humiliation.
It was about peace.
And tonight, I finally had it. Morning light crept through the glass walls, brushing across the penthouse in soft gold. I hadn't slept, not because of restlessness, but because peace, after years of struggle, felt almost too quiet. I made coffee the same way I used to when I lived in that rundown studio apartment, cheap beans, no sugar, just habit. Except now, the view was different. Back then, it was peeling paint and noisy neighbors. Now it was the skyline, a view people paid millions for. My phone buzzed on the counter. Megan's name flashed across the screen. For a moment, I hesitated, but curiosity won. Can we talk? The message read. An hour later, she showed up, no makeup, no staged confidence, no laughter at my expense. Just Megan, standing at my door like a stranger who wasn't sure she was welcome. I opened it. You came early. I didn't sleep either, she murmured. Can I come in? I nodded and stepped aside. She entered slowly, eyes scanning the place like she still couldn't believe it was real. It's beautiful, she whispered. Everything about it, it's so you. Thanks, I said simply, pouring her a cup of coffee. She took it with shaky hands. Avery, I owe you an apology. I leaned against the counter, studying her. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. Her voice cracked. I was awful to you. I laughed when Dad mocked you. I ignored your calls when you needed someone to believe in you. I thought you were lost. I said nothing. I'd imagined this conversation 100 times, every version ending with anger, revenge, or a perfectly timed comeback. But now, looking at her tear-streaked face, I didn't want any of that. I was jealous, she admitted, lowering her head. You had courage. You failed, yes, but you kept going.
And I
never did. I just played it safe, trying to keep Dad happy. Her confession hung heavy between us. For a moment, I saw us, as we used to be, two girls sitting cross-legged on the bedroom floor, dreaming about growing up. Before life turned competition into a battlefield. Megan, I said softly, I didn't build all this to prove you wrong. She looked up. Then why did you? I smiled faintly. To prove I wasn't what you all said I was. Her lip trembled. And now that you have it, what do you feel? I glanced at the skyline. Free. Silence stretched between us, comfortable this time. The kind of silence that healed, not hurt. She finally nodded. You're stronger than any of us ever gave you credit for. I chuckled lightly. Took you long enough to notice. We both laughed, A small, genuine sound that felt like the first piece of our childhood finding its way back. Then Megan's tone shifted, serious again. Dad told me he's selling the old house. Said it feels empty now. I swallowed. Maybe it's time. She looked down at her cup. He regrets everything, Avery. He told me he wishes he could take it all back. I turned away, blinking against the sudden sting in my eyes. Regret doesn't rewrite history. No, she said gently. But maybe it starts a new one. Her words landed deep. I walked to the balcony. The same spot I'd stood on last night, the same wind wrapping around me. Do you know what the hardest part was, Megan? I asked quietly. She shook her head. It wasn't the nights I went hungry.
It wasn't the people who doubted me.
It was realizing that my own family, people I loved, saw me as a joke. That broke me in ways success can't fully fix. Megan's eyes glistened. I know, she whispered, and I'll spend every day trying to make it right. Something inside me softened. I reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. Then, that's enough. We stood there for a while. Two sisters, once divided by pride and pain, now bound again by something real. The elevator chimed softly in the background. Dad stepped out. He looked older in the daylight, tired but humble. No arrogance, no sarcasm. Just quiet remorse. I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome, he said carefully. I turned toward him. You're always welcome, Dad. You just have to come with respect this time. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. I deserve that. He looked around the penthouse, his voice low. You did what I couldn't. You made something from nothing. I'm proud of you, Avery. It was simple, but it hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I just stared at him. Years of hurt clashed with the warmth in his tone. Finally, I said, I didn't need to hear that, but it still means everything. He smiled faintly. I'm glad. We sat together for a few minutes, the three of us, drinking coffee in silence. Not as rivals or strangers, but as people who finally understood each other. When they left later that morning, the elevator doors closed softly, and I stood alone again in my glass palace. But this time, I didn't feel alone. I walked to the balcony, sunlight kissing my face. The city buzzed below, full of dreams, mistakes, and second chances. I took a deep breath. Years ago, I was the girl who begged for validation. Today, I was the woman who built her own worth. And as the wind swept through my hair, one thought settled in like quiet thunder. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right.
The clink of silverware on porcelain was the only sound at the dinner table, until my mother's voice sliced through it like a blade. This trip isn't for someone like you, Emily, she said, without even looking at me. Her tone was calm, but the words carried that cold sting she'd perfected over the years. Just stay home. You wouldn't fit in. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. A forkful of pasta hung mid-air in my hand. What's that supposed to mean? My voice was steady, but my stomach twisted. Across the table, my brother Tyler leaned back in his chair, smirking. She means you'd slow us down. This is an exclusive resort, Em, not exactly your scene. My sister Haley giggled, twirling her wine glass. Besides, you'd need a whole new wardrobe just to blend in. Can you even afford that? My breath caught. That was the thing about my family. They didn't throw punches. They carved you open with little cuts, subtle enough to pass as teasing, but deep enough to bleed. Dad chuckled as if they were all in on some inside joke. It's just a trip, Emily. Don't make it a big deal. The heat in my cheeks was building. I glanced at the itinerary lying in the middle of the table. 5 first-class tickets to the Bahamas. My siblings' names printed neatly in bold. Mine wasn't there. They already booked everything, Haley added, leaning forward like she was sharing a juicy secret. Tyler even got the ocean view suite. Guess you'll have the house to yourself, Tyler said, grinning like he'd just done me a favor. I set my fork down, slow and deliberate. Right, I said.
My voice calm, too calm. "Enjoy your little getaway," Haley smirked. "Oh, we will." They laughed, the kind of laugh that makes you feel like the punchline. But they didn't notice my hand under the table, gripping my phone. My pulse was steady now, because while they were busy dismissing me, they had no idea I'd been keeping a secret, one that was about to flip their perfect little trip upside down. The next morning, before the sun had even stretched across the horizon, I was already awake. My phone buzzed with a single text. "All set. The jet will be at your driveway in an hour." I looked at the stack of glossy airline tickets sitting on my kitchen counter, the ones I'd borrowed after dinner when Tyler left his jacket on the chair and his pocket hung open. 5 tickets, first class, now in my hand. Outside, the low hum of engines made my heart pound. I stepped to the window, and there it was, sleek, white, and impossible to ignore. My husband Adam's private jet, parked on the street like it owned the neighborhood. The crew stood at the base of the steps, sunglasses on, waiting for me. I slipped the tickets into my bag, grabbed my sunglasses, and walked to the door. Today the tables were turning, and my family had no idea their perfect trip had just been canceled. The low hum of the jet's engines was already in the air when I stepped out of my front door. The morning sun glinted off its polished white body, parked just beyond the curb like it had every right to be there. 2 uniformed attendants stood at the base of the stairs, their posture crisp, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. I clutched the ticket sleeve in my bag, feeling the edges press against my palm. Down the street, my family was loading suitcases into an Uber. Haley was posing in the driveway, Tyler filming her like she was about to star in a luxury travel ad. My parents stood off to the side, chatting with the driver. When they saw me walking toward them, all activity slowed. Haley tilted her head, spotting the jet behind me. "What's that doing here?" she asked, her voice too light, too curious. "Our ride," I said calmly. Mom scoffed. "Don't tell me Adam sent that for you." "He did," I replied, adjusting my sunglasses. "We have somewhere to be." Tyler smirked. "You're seriously trying to compete with us? That's cute." Without another word, I reached into my bag and pulled out the ticket sleeve. Their eyes locked on it instantly. Passenger 1, Karen Miller. Passenger 2, David Miller. Passenger 3, Tyler Miller. Passenger 4, Haley Miller. I let the pause hang. And passenger 5, some golf buddy. No Emily. Mom's smile faltered. "Where did you get those?" "You left them where I could see them," I said. "I figured I'd hold on to them for safekeeping." Dad's face tightened. "Emily?" "No," I cut in, my voice steady. "Last night you made it clear this trip wasn't for someone like me, so I made other plans." Haley laughed. "Other plans? What, going to the same place?" "Exactly," I said. "But I'll be staying somewhere. You can't." The jet's engines rumbled a little louder, like it was impatient. My family just stared, half shocked, half scrambling to process that the girl they dismissed at dinner now had the upper hand. "Enjoy your trip," I added, slipping the tickets back into my bag. "I know I will." And without waiting for another word, I turned and walked toward the jet, the sound of their disbelief chasing me all the way to the stairs. The sunlight hit the jet's metallic body like it had been polished just for this moment. I placed my foot on the first step, the faint vibration from the engines thrumming through the metal under my shoe. Every instinct told me to keep walking forward, but something made me pause halfway up. I glanced over my shoulder. My family was still standing there in the driveway. Haley's mouth was hanging open. Tyler was holding his phone halfway up as if debating whether to record or pretend this wasn't happening. Mom's arms were crossed, but the stiffness in her jaw gave her away. Dad's hand was clenched on the handle of his suitcase. I let them watch me. I wanted them to. The attendant at the top of the stairs smiled politely. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Cole." Inside, the cabin was bright and immaculate. Cream leather seats, walnut accents, and a faint citrus scent in the air. A crystal carafe of orange juice sat on the table beside a plate of fresh berries. Adam was seated toward the back, phone in hand, dressed in a tailored navy jacket that looked effortless on him. He stood when he saw me, setting the phone aside. "Right on time," he said. I smiled faintly. "I made sure of it." He studied my face for a beat. "You're not shaking." "That's good." "I'm not here to shake," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I'm here to prove a point." He nodded once, understanding exactly what I meant without me having to explain. "So," he said, glancing toward the window, "they saw the jet?" "Oh, they saw it," I replied, buckling my seatbelt. "And the tickets. They know exactly where they stand." The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Good morning. We'll be departing in 5 minutes. Estimated flight time to Exuma is just over 3 hours. Please prepare for takeoff." As the engines deepened to a steady roar, I looked out the oval window. The Uber had started to pull away from my parents' driveway, my family's faces still turned toward the jet. Even from here, I could imagine the conversation. Haley's high-pitched disbelief, Tyler's muttering, Mom's clipped accusations, Dad's attempt to play it cool while quietly seething. For years, I'd been the quiet one in the family, the one they didn't invite, didn't consult, didn't take seriously, and yet here I was, heading to the same island. On my own terms. The jet began to roll forward. Adam reached across the aisle and placed his hand over mine, grounding me. "You know," he said, "this isn't just about the trip. This is about you finally not letting them define you." "I know," I said softly, feeling the truth of it settle inside me. And as the nose of the jet lifted from the runway, leaving the street, the houses, and their laughter behind, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. 3 hours later, the turquoise waters of Exuma glittered beneath us like shattered glass catching the sun. The jet's shadow skimmed the coastline before we touched down on the small private runway. The moment the cabin door opened, the warm, salty breeze swept in, carrying that heady mix of sea air and sun-warmed sand. Waiting at the bottom of the steps was a line of resort staff in crisp white uniforms, each wearing a name badge and a smile that looked like it belonged in a luxury travel magazine. A black SUV idled behind them, the kind with tinted windows, so deep they looked like obsidian. "Welcome to Exuma, Mrs. Cole," the resort manager said, stepping forward with an iPad in hand. "We have your entire ocean view wing ready, along with the cabanas you requested. Your private dinner on the beach will be set up for sunset." Adam glanced at me with a faint smirk. "You really went all in, didn't you?" I shrugged, trying to hide the satisfaction curling in my chest. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. Inside the SUV, the leather seats were cool against my skin, the air conditioning sharp after the Caribbean heat. The road wound past swaying palms and bursts of hibiscus flowers until the gates of the resort came into view, towering iron flanked by security in spotless uniforms. The car slowed, and as we pulled in, I caught sight of something that made my pulse skip. Another black SUV parked just outside the entrance, luggage on the curb, and my family standing there in the heat, talking to a visibly apologetic staff member. I could see Haley gesturing wildly, her oversized sunglasses pushed up on her head, her free hand planted on her hip. Tyler was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. Mom's lips were tight, speaking low to Dad, who looked like he was ready to argue with anyone in a 5-foot radius. The manager beside me followed my gaze and gave a polite, knowing smile. "They tried to check in for the ocean view suites this morning," he said. "We explained the wing was reserved exclusively for your event. We've offered them garden view rooms instead." I bit back a laugh. "And they declined. Said they'd wait for the mistake to be fixed." When the SUV rolled past them, Haley's head snapped toward me. Her expression froze somewhere between disbelief and fury. Tyler's jaw dropped. Mom's eyes narrowed into thin, sharp lines. Dad took a single step forward, as if he might block the car, but the driver eased us smoothly through the gates. The resort opened up before us, white stucco buildings draped in bougainvillea, infinity pools spilling into views of the ocean, staff carrying trays of tropical drinks to guests lounging under wide umbrellas. It was quiet, serene, exclusive. When we reached the private wing, a butler stepped forward to open my door. "Welcome home for the week, Mrs. Cole." Home for the week. I like the sound of that. As we walked toward the largest suite, I could still feel their eyes on my back from outside those gates. They had come to this island expecting to shut me out. Instead, they were the ones on the other side of the line, waiting, watching, and realizing that no amount of laughter at my expense could change where I stood now. And I wasn't done yet. The first 2 days at the resort felt like living in a different universe. Morning swims in the infinity pool with no one else around. Breakfast on my balcony overlooking the water, the sound of waves breaking against the shore as my background. Music staff who knew my name before I even introduced myself. Adam spent his mornings on conference calls for his company, leaving me the space to soak it all in. And I did, deliberately, unapologetically. But I knew my family was still here. Somewhere beyond the manicured hedges and security gates, they were simmering. I'd heard enough from the resort manager to know they'd managed to book rooms at a less expensive hotel down the road. They'd still been trying to talk their way into their rightful suites. The opportunity for a final word wasn't something I planned. It came to me. On the third evening, the resort hosted a beachfront welcome dinner for my Literacy Foundation's donors and volunteers. Long white tables draped in linen stood under strings of glowing lights. The smell of grilled seafood and fresh herbs mingled with the warm ocean breeze. As I stepped onto the sand in a flowing deep blue dress, I spotted them immediately, just beyond the rope that marked the private section of the beach. Mom in a stiff cream outfit that didn't suit the island heat. Dad with his arms crossed, scanning the setup. Haley in a sundress that was clearly meant for Instagram, phone in hand. Tyler standing just behind them, smirking like he was above the whole thing. They weren't here to crash the dinner. They were here to make a point. But so was I. I walked straight toward the rope, every eye at my table following me. "Evening," I said, stopping just in front of them. Mom's mouth tightened. "So, this is your little event?" I tilted my head. "Not so little, actually. We've raised enough to open 2 new reading centers in under 24 hours. Dad gave a sarcastic huff. "That's nice. So, are you done playing games now? You've made your point." "No," I said, smiling faintly. "Not yet." Haley crossed her arms. "You seriously think humiliating us like this makes you the bigger person?" "I'm not humiliating you," I replied. "I'm just showing you what I've been doing while you were busy telling me I don't fit in." I gestured toward the long tables, the people laughing and chatting, the resort staff moving effortlessly between them. "You wanted me to stay home because you thought this trip was too good for me. But the truth is, this trip was never about you at all." Mom's voice dropped to that low, dangerous register she used when she was angry, but wanted to look composed. "We're still family, Emily." "Family?" I let the word hang for a beat. Family doesn't measure your worth by the clothes you wear or the invitations you get. Family doesn't laugh at you for not being good enough. And family definitely doesn't tell you to stay behind like a stray dog while they go make memories without you. Dad's jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." "No," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "I'm remembering." The sound of clinking glasses drifted, over from the tables, followed by a burst of applause from my guests. The manager approached, holding a small microphone. "Mrs. Cole, we're ready for your speech." I took the mic, but before I turned to my audience, I looked back at them one last time. "You could have been here tonight," I said, "not just as guests, but as people who supported me. But you made your choice, and I made mine." I didn't wait for a reply. I walked to the center of the tables, the sand warm under my heels, and faced my guests. Behind me, I could still feel my family watching. "Good evening," I began, my voice carrying just enough to reach them too. "When I started this foundation, a lot of people didn't believe in me. They thought I didn't belong in places like this. But what they didn't understand is that belonging isn't something people give you. It's something you claim for yourself." The guests clapped, some even standing. My eyes swept over the tables, past the twinkling lights, and toward the ocean. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was proving anything to them. I wasn't playing on their terms. I was just living mine, on my own ground, in my own voice. The sun dipped lower, casting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The waves kept rolling in, steady and endless. And somewhere beyond the rope, my family stood silent, not laughing, not dismissing, just silent, exactly the way I wanted it.